Hello and welcome to a Bit of Film podcast. I'm Hatty.
And I am James.
This podcast is for film lovers, spoiler chasers, and general banter. We are two Brits in lockdown with too much time on our hands talking about films.
We both hold degrees and jobs in the creative arts. Yes, our parents are so proud that it ultimately led to this podcast. So we might go into some behind the scenes or production elements you might not know or be familiar with.
We release episodes every 2 weeks, talking about the latest film and TV offerings. If you love excessive defending of plot holes and mispronouncing actors' names, this is for you.
Please be advised we discuss spoilers, so please turn off if you haven't seen or keep listening if you don't care.
This week we are talking about superheroes out of their time, Wonder Woman 1984, and the first episode of the new Marvel TV series, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. In Wonder Woman 1984, Diana must contend with a work colleague and businessman whose desire for extreme wealth sends the world down a path of destruction after an ancient artifact that grants wishes goes missing. This is the follow-up sequel to the breakout first film directed by Patty Jenkins, with Gal Gadot and Chris Pine both returning their roles, with newcomers Kristen Wiig and Pedro Pascal. Please to be aware that we do go into spoiler territory, so if you haven't watched the film, this is your final warning. Still here? Amazing. Let's get started.
Wonder Woman 1984. Came out Christmas 2020?
Yes. Before Lockdown 3.
Before Lockdown 3. If you're in the UK. Or England. Was it UK or was it England? Anyway, so, what did you think?
Okay. It wasn't as good as the first one.
Yes.
The first Wonder Woman, at least in the DC world as it was probably one of the first... it was the best DCU film that they brought out before, and this was before Aquaman. So it had a high bar to meet, I suppose.
And it was the first female one as well, I think, female led.
I suppose if we're talking about the MCU equivalent, and then this being the DCE, then yes, I think this was the first one. Yeah, it was a funny one. I mean, I remember watching the trailer for 1984 and thinking this could be really cool. It kind of had that Guardians of the Galaxy vibe, I suppose, just in the way they were using the 80s as its style and its theme, which I thought was very good. And to be fair, in the film, I did like that sort of 80s vibes that they were bringing out.
It was very 80s, yeah.
Very, very, very 80s. It definitely had some pacing issues. Like, it was far too long.
Really? So some issues with pacing? Oh,
Really? Do you not notice that? No, it was far too long. It could have been done with being about half an hour shorter. And I just remember this. There's a whole sequence in the beginning, I think, where Wonder Woman is fighting these four people in a shopping mall. Couldn't name the song, but there's some sort of 80s music playing in the background, and it's at that point where when you're choreographing something like that, what you want is for the sequence, or like the punches and stuff like that, to sort of fit with the beat of the song. And there was just none of that. Like, it was like the fight sequence was going at an entirely different pace to the song that they were setting it to. I mean, go back and watch the trailer and you'll see what I mean, because they have obviously moments from that opening sequence in time with the music that they've got for the trailer.
And it looks much better.
And it just works. It looks so slick. I mean, other films have tried to do it before, and I suppose it's where...
Shazam did it better.
Yes, that's a good example.
With him going Shazam and changing and the guy being like, what? That was great. Another more scene that worked.
Well, I was thinking more of Edgar Wright's films. So, like with Baby Driver, where the sequences are in time to the music or the playlist that is being played at the time. It's that whole sort of thing. And even just some of where they actually did the stunts or whether they did them as CGI, just looked a bit naff. It was
just off. Somewhere it was off. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It wasn't as polished, let's say, like that. It went on too long. I think that was a problem. Like, there was points where I was starting to switch off, but there were some really good points to it. Like, I thought, is it Kristen Wiig who plays
yes.
Barbara? I thought she was really good, and you might end up disagreeing with me on this later on.
I do like Kristen Wiig, and I think she had a bit of a tough job with the character personally, because the transformation was a bit rough somewhere. I'm not sure why, but it didn't quite flow as well as it should have.
So obviously the whole concept is that there's this rock which is granting wishes, and she basically wishes to be like Wonder Woman, and that comes with a few surprises, I think is fair to say. But yeah, her initial transformation happens pretty quickly, but then I would say that kind of fits in with what the whole lore of this stone, this rock was, because at the end of the day, people wish for things and they happen straight away. but I did like the slow descent of her character, and I think she played both sides very well, in the sense that she was obviously this clumsy,
overlooked,
unpopular character, and then sort of becoming a darker version of herself. I don't know. I thought she played both ends of the spectrum very well. I mean, the CGI in the very last sequence is questionable.
Yep.
And considering that this was around the same time as Cats came out, not a good decision.
That is her character, though, in the comics, to be fair.
Yes, I know. So I know that they were calling back to that, which makes sense, and that they had to do the full transformation. Although, to be fair, when she starts to talk about how she doesn't want to be like anyone else, she wants to be like an apex predator, I'm thinking, right, so the writers have got to this point, and they're thinking, right, how do we turn her into a cheetah? I know, let's just write this. And yeah, that was odd. But her whole motivations for wanting to protect Pedro Pascal's character, Maxwell Lord. So I could understand why she suddenly turned and wanted to basically to protect him, because she was drunk on power, I suppose. Yeah, she had the taste for the life which she didn't want to give away.
So my main thing with 1984 is the fact that they changed Diana's character. Fundamentally, they changed her character. So in the first one, she was putting up with guys staring at her. She was putting up with this kind of undertone of people disapproving of her. And she just didn't care. The kind of inner strength that she had to just kind of ignore it and say, I'm going to take what I want, is the reason why it inspired so many people, and how everyone kind of there was this big female thing, and there were stories of kids dressing up as her, like boys dressing up as her, because she was just cool. And they just lost it. They went down that kind of seedy 80s creepy guys. I mean, I think just about every guy comes onto her in a really kind of crude way for no real reason, and she handles it in a way of kind of oh, just leave me alone. And I'm sure they were trying to talk about a kind of Me Too feel and stuff like that, but the reason why everyone loved her is the fact that she was able to, despite all of everything that was going on, to be the better person, to take those steps that kind of show people that they were doing something wrong, and then do something amazing out of it. To me, the big one is the World War I, where everyone's like, you can't do this. And she goes, yeah, I'm going to just do it. And she just, this sea of no's coming at her. And she's just like, nah, I'm going to do this. I know this is the right thing to do. And they just took that out of her character.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Particularly now, it was it was uncomfortable for me seeing all these men basically approaching. It's her and Barbara even.
Yes.
Again,
yeah.
Barbara starts to become more like Diana. But yeah, it was uncomfortable, the amount of times that was put on screen, I suppose. Which, and another day, maybe, I don't know actually, maybe, it was making me feel uncomfortable, but I wasn't necessarily, it didn't feel like the film was telling you that it was uncomfortable. It was just because
that was her life. That's what she just had to put up with, because she was beautiful.
Yeah, to a point. Yeah, it was a very odd thing to sort of kind of hammer home on quite a lot. And it wasn't you're quite right. None of them were kind of cool. Well, except for the one guy who got beaten up by Barbara. No one was really sort of called out on it. And I know what you mean in terms of the first one, where someone tells her that you can't do this, and she's like, yes I can, and then just does it. But I think that's because in the first film she was very much a fish out of water. She'd never experienced the real world.
But that implies that suddenly as a her character has suddenly just accepted that this is just the way things are. So she'd kind of been eroded as who she was. Why that's not a good thing to show. You wouldn't have Superman being like, oh yes, I've given up on flying because, there's drones now, I don't like that anymore.
Interesting, because that's slowly coming to The Last Jedi again, in terms of the portrayal of Luke Skywalker. Look, I know what you mean. At the end of the day, if we talk about it chronologically, the first Wonder Woman will have been in, let's say, 1915, 16, towards the end of the war. And this is now in the 80s, so that's 70 years of her living in the real world. So I think she's, at least in this film, she's going to become a lot more accustomed for right. This is the tricky territory.
Is that right though? To do that?
Right in what way?
To be true to the character. Would you have Robin Hood stop giving to the poor because suddenly it's a little bit difficult? I don't. Maybe it makes the character more complex. Maybe it does.
Well, I think if they'd maybe, I don't know, pushed on that a bit more, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, maybe made it part of the story. I mean, I get what you mean. In the film itself, they don't really make a theme out of it, in the sense that, I mean, at the end of the day, she's 70 years on and she's still not pining over Chris Pine.
Yes, exactly. Heartbroken. Yes, yeah, but that doesn't mean you'd sacrifice all of your morals for it. It's weak for me. It's weak storytelling.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's necessarily the right thing that they did. I think they just kind of glossed over it, and they had to fit her into this world. There was a role reversal in the fact that obviously Steve Trevor got brought back, and he was the guy from the 1920s suddenly brought into the 1980s. So he was the fish out of water, and Diana was the one who was much more accustomed to the new world. So if they had both of them doing that, thematically it wouldn't have worked. I do get what you mean in terms of, like, I don't think for any point Diana put up with anyone's shit. She kind of just like brushed them off.
She just walks them away. Yeah, she brushed them off. And I think, to me, the character, if she'd been there for 70 years, would have found an amazing way of like de-escalating it. She'd have somehow drawn attention to it as the person have done it, but she wouldn't have done it in a kind of like, oh yeah, just leave it alone. You know, I don't. To me, it was really sad that this amazing character that we had after 70 years is just like everyone else and just sick and tired of it. And it was like, no, this is supposed to be a bloody superhero movie. I'm supposed to be like, yes, this, you know, we can change the world. There is a positivity in it. This left a massive hole for Chris Pine and Pablo Pascal to totally steal the show for me. Chris Pine did a brilliant job, as he did last time, of just having fun with the character.
Oh, I'd agree.
So many jokes, and just the thing with the spacecraft and like taking the flyer from the guy dressed in the full astronaut thing. And then like the dustbin as well, just being that she's like, no, that's a trash can. He's like, oh, okay, all right. It was great, those little vignettes. Yeah.
No, I completely agree. I do think that having him back, he did just play with it. But then I suppose it was a case, like in terms of the plot, he didn't have an awful lot to do. He could just play with it. I mean, even Pedro Pascal's character, he was a TV personality anyway, but obviously he had an agenda. He did do a fantastic job with what he had anyway, because
he made an arc of it. He really gave you those moments. He really signaled to you the journey. She didn't.
Yeah, he had his motivation. He wanted to. Well, actually, the more I think about it, I mean, obviously he wanted to build this successful company. That was where it started with, and he thought if he could get his wish rock, then he could deal with that.
He could be a good father, which was a lovely sentiment. That if he could just sort this, he could be the father that he wanted to be. And then, of course, has to learn that, no, he just could be the father he should be. That was lovely. I liked that. Yeah,
it was a little ambiguous of whether or not he actually got his comeuppance in the end.
Yes, he wasn't punished for nearly ending the world several times. Yes, no, I'll give you that one.
No. The thing with his character, or thing with him as a villain, maybe, I suppose. I mean, at the end of the day, I was kind of expecting there to be some sort of reveal that he was some sort of god, sort of reclaiming his power or something like that. But I think
that's too much Suicide Squad. They wouldn't touch that.
Well, it's too much like the first film as well.
True.
But I think the fact that he was a human consumed by this power sort of, yeah, like you say, played well in the fact that it did come back to the fact he was doing this to build a legacy for his son, or like make his son proud of him. But in terms of how he became the stone, the rock, and then he was granting wishes to other people, I found it a bit rocky in terms of how it escalated, how he needed to make everyone's wish come true. I don't quite know how that was, unless that was something to do with the fact that that was what the rock was making him want to do.
Well, yeah, I think that was the bit where it was talking about the previous societies which it had destroyed, that it had to take over the whole society, and that's what would end it.
Oh, that was it, yeah, because they do the sidetrack where they start talking to the Mayan. Yeah, that was the end of their civilization, because they couldn't destroy the stone and no one would renounce their wishes as well. Yeah, it was an odd one. I liked it in parts. I do agree that Gal Gadot was, I think, overshadowed by the other characters. I do think Kristen Wiig did do a really good job.
Actually, on that bit, what I think is the problem is that they just had too many antagonists. Because you had Pedro Pascal, who was doing so much in the narrative of mixing things up that she was having to solve. And then you also had Kristen Wiig, which meant that Kristen Wiig kind of became a secondary character. But she didn't really have no offense, as a motivation to just want to be Wonder Woman. It just didn't work for me, because she wasn't trying to do something else. You know, she didn't have loads of experience about the Mayans. She wasn't given kind of those moments of a character to develop. She kind of stayed the same. And so it muddled the narrative, it reduced Diana, and it basically ended up with kind of just, meh.
And yeah, just I suppose even like the action sequences, like there's that whole sequence in Cairo, which didn't feel epic.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel, it was
subdued.
There was no moment where in the first film, where she climbs out of the trench into no man's land, and there's that sequence. Like, that was incredible. That was a really, really good sequence, and there wasn't anything like that in this. I think they tried to do it with the Cairo sequence, but it didn't land.
Because it was like a kryptonite thing, that she had to reduce her power, so she had to be losing. So she was losing for like nearly the whole film.
Oh, right, yes, that was why, yeah. So because Steve got brought back, she was losing her power. Well, actually, to be fair, they should have pushed further, because I think the problem with the DC universe, and mainly at the moment I'm talking about Wonder Woman and Superman, is that they are effectively indestructive.
Yeah.
Therefore, the risk isn't there, if you can see what I mean.
Definitely,
Like, at the end of the day,
completely.
if someone shoots Superman, he's fine. There is zero sort of risk of him getting harmed, which I think, again, I suppose the one advantage of the Cairo one was when they were shooting at her, she was getting hurt, she was struggling, but they didn't really. It's another part of the story which they should have pushed more.
I mean, Marvel would have done a thing with Tony Stark where I think he puts his hand out to try and stop it, and the whole mechanism fails, and so you see him trying to do what he's done before, but he's being let down, and they didn't show that for her. They didn't give her those moments to be like, stop the, arms crossed, stop the bullets. They didn't really milk it enough that she was losing her power.
No, it's that whole arc should have been that she was, like you say, trying to do what she's used to doing, but because she's got Steve back, her powers are failing, and basically, I suppose, see, I mean, even when I'm saying it, it seems odd, but basically beating her down to the point where she has to renounce her wish, as painful as that is. Because it's that whole thing in terms of the narrative. You have the point where everything goes dark, everything seems hopeless, and then you have the moment where it picks back up. It's part of the whole...
The metaphorical death, yeah.
Yeah, I think the fact that Gal Gadot and Chris Pine both had really good chemistry in that film it made that payoff when she had to renounce the wish. That worked. That was a payoff. That was a sad moment. But I think at the end of the day, as far as her arc as a character, basically they had some of the pieces there. They just didn't develop them like they should have done. Maybe that's us critiquing it because we're sat in the audience chair and they're in the director's seat.
But this also goes back to the fact this is a sequel. And in the first one, it was all about the fact that, Diana, you're stronger than you think. Like, don't forget who you are. Don't forget where you've come from. And there was none of that. There was no, aside from the opening, which was kick-ass, I have to admit, the competition that they did, that was really cool. Enjoyed that. But it wasn't really, it was a test of strength. And I wouldn't say that the film was about that. The film was about the fact that she was heartbroken. And, what do you do with a broken-hearted warrior? Well, they're never going to be as good. And you have to, renounce it, build yourself back up, and keep going. That's what the story was about. And the whole Amazon kind of angle that we'd had in the first one, that was this backbone, was just gone.
Yeah, again, I suppose it's, I don't know. I'm trying to find excuses for it where probably there are none. But
no, don't worry. You can just agree with me. It's okay.
Can I point out though, her suddenly having the ability to fly? Where was that in Batman v Superman / Justice League? And I'm not entirely sure if she was flying or, to quote Toy Story, falling with style.
I did think that.
Because even in those sequences, she was using a combination, slowly going into Superman pose as well, which I'm presuming was an Easter egg or like a little reference, which didn't work. She was flying in quotation marks and then using her whip to try and give her a boost or something like that. I don't know. It was not the whole CGI was questionable anyway. I just don't think that was needed. But am I right in thinking that, is it Patty Jenkins? Was she the director?
Yes.
Did she direct the first one?
Yeah.
Right, so this is what I don't get. It's like, how can you go from making that film to making this film?
I don't know. Yeah. And the other thing, the marketing. I loved the marketing for this one, for 1984. The colours were amazing. Like, it was all like tonal, and you had like some tech kind of images behind it. But it looked LGBT, not in a bad way. And I kind of expected at some point for there to be some kind of LGBT moment in the story. And there wasn't. And I don't know if that's just me who saw that. But I remember somebody saying to me, like, oh yeah, it's got kind of rainbow colours. Like, it's all, she's done inclusion before. To me, the marketing didn't match it at all.
I'm not sure I got that from that.
Okay.
I know what you mean. I mean, I suppose in terms of the colours, I suppose. But then again, we are talking about the 80s.
Yeah, no, that's true. Maybe that was just me then. Maybe that was just me being hopeful.
I don't know. Like, at the end of the day, there were moments that I enjoyed. I just think there was a lot more potential, and it fell victim to the sequel problem, where it wasn't going to be able to be as good as the first one. But I suppose part of the problem is as well, it's being set between effectively her origin story and then her appearance in Batman v Superman.
Can't we just pretend that didn't happen? Like, we'd all be happy if that just didn't happen. We covered Wonder Woman 1984 pretty well, and I'm glad to know we're both on the same side that this is just rubbish. It's not what it should have been. Not to follow that film.
I think it's one of those ones that I will watch again at some point. Now that the veil of expectation has been lifted, now that I know what I'm dealing with, I can rewatch it and maybe sort of start to appreciate other elements a bit more. But yeah, I think in short, I think it was far too long, had some pacing issues, and it had a lot of potential. It just didn't push the points that it needed to. And like you said earlier on, Chris Pine, who shouldn't really have needed to be in the film, stole the show.
Completely.
And I think Pedro Pascal did a very good job as well in terms of that arc, like you say, except for the fact that he clearly had no punishment at the end. That definitely needs to be resolved.
Yes. He should have just been shoved into a truck and driven off into the distance by some government ops. Definitely.
Yeah, something on those lines.
In Marvel, they definitely would have.
Yeah, no, it was a bit of a disappointment. I think just because the first film was so strong. Like, the first film was a solid... I mean, the first film arguably was more or less based on Captain America, but it was still a really solid entry, and like you said, did all the things that I think this film didn't do.
I remember you telling me this, and I don't agree, because for me, the only thing that's similar is the fact that they are out of time and it's World War One. But in terms of the character journey...
She has her own Howling Commandos. Her little band of so you got the Frenchman, the Indian, the Scottish guy.
Oh yeah, okay.
Which is what Captain America had in the first Avenger. There's thematic parallels, is what I'm saying.
Okay, yeah, I will give you that.
I think of all the DC films, Wonder Woman was probably the most Marveliest.
Oh, no. You see, I'm gonna jump on. I don't think Marvel could have made Wonder Woman. Yes, in terms of the structure, I will give you its closest.
Whoa. Yeah, no. I'm agreeing with you. I'm going to cut you off there because I'm agreeing with you that Marvel couldn't make Wonder Woman because it's taken them fucking years to start doing female-led superhero films. And that is a discredit. Carry on, I've said my piece.
But that to me is because it's a dark theme that they had to tackle. Marvel still don't really know how to tackle... Because they have such a light-hearted theme, and, do you wear your mother's drapes? That sort of stuff, which is great. But they just didn't know how to do that with other characters. And why Wonder Woman to me was so good and, classic DC. It was about something hard. It was about the fact that it was, she lost her family. She suddenly had to go on this quest to a place that was fundamentally alien. And Captain America was not about that. Captain America was about being courageous and brave in the face of, the kind of American dream. And she doesn't have any of that. She didn't know the American dream. She was just, I'm here to kick ass. And this is not right. There was a morality to it. I suppose they are both moral tales, but it was a different kind of morality. It was, this is, I know you're tired. I know you've been fighting this war for years, but we've got to do this. And just not taking no for an answer. And Captain America, to me, he was always he was told no by military guys, she seemed to be told no by just about everyone. And that was what was great about it. The journey just was darker and better. There's that shot where she's getting on the train and there's all the wounded soldiers. I don't remember that in Captain America. I remember that in Captain America they had a line of dead soldiers, but they never do a shot of all the kind of injured people coming back.
True. But again, I suppose that is where the sort of darker side of the DCEU was still bleeding through. I think, they were coming off the back of Man of Steel with Wonder Woman and Batman v Superman, I suppose. So I think when I'm saying that Wonder Woman was most marveliest, maybe I am doing a bit of discredit. Maybe it was just the more consistently good film at the time. Yeah, I do get what you mean. Absolutely. There are definitely differences, obviously differences between them. I do still think it's what I say about the whole Howling Commandos. What I'm going to say is that the stereotypes that built up their crew, that screamed Captain America to me.
But he has what's his name? No, what's his name? Buddy?
Bucky, the Winter Soldier.
Bucky, thank you. Yes, to me, Captain America is about him and Bucky. I think that's one of my favorite kind of relationships in Marvel, because it's again really heartfelt and emotional. And we can come on to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because I have some things about Bucky that I need to just
I know we're moving now on from Wonder Woman to Captain America, but as far as what you're saying, the whole dynamic between Steve and Bucky, I didn't think that was going to become a a feature of the trilogy of Captain America films, but then it was like, I mean, in each film, obviously they had that development, and I thought that was a really good, consistent thing to tell across the trilogy. I think of all the films that they've done where there's been three, so obviously you got Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America. I don't think there are others which are trilogies other than the Avengers films. Captain America was definitely the best trilogy.
Yes.
But and not necessarily in terms of how action-packed the films were, because obviously Civil War, as the third Captain America film, clearly trumped Iron Man 3, because at the end of the day, it also had a lot more of the Avengers in. But I think as far as the story that was told across those three films, the fact that they had Steve and Bucky kind of as that central theme, it just worked, and it was really well handled and very well done.
Yeah, and it's because Bucky was his kryptonite. And Bucky was this broken character, and it was great. I mean, it was genuinely my favorite part of the Captain America film was him and Bucky on the helicopter. That was the moment where I went, "Oh, bloody hell, Marvel's actually doing something." He's basically got PTSD. He's a wonderfully complex character. He's.
Wait, sorry. When you say helicopter, do you mean the helicarrier in the second film?
Maybe I do. There's that moment where he's like holding him over. Is that the second film?
I think so. Well, there's the point where Bucky as the Winter Soldier is basically beating the crap out of Captain America, and he's like, "I'm with you to the end of the line."
Yeah,
and he pauses.
one.
He's getting that association. Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
It's great. It's great that the one person Captain America can't save, kind of.
Yeah. Well, the one person he can't beat. Sorry, I think is the better way to describe it.
True.
At the end of the day, he does get saved, but in terms of like the one villain that he can't beat, he can't defeat him because he's his friend, and he can't get past that. Again, I suppose it's those themes that, I mean, it's obviously told in the film, but then it could have been pushed a little further. I suppose that's where Marvel sticks to what it knows and what's safe in terms of the light-hearted comedy of it, as well as having these emotional beats, but not necessarily pushing them to the point where you're emotionally crippled. Which again, I suppose, is in WandaVision, where WandaVision kind of changed the formula, because the whole fact that she had to say goodbye to Vision and her two kids, for now anyway, was really, really tragic, because like that was the third time that she had to watch Vision die.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe this is where Marvel's going to sort of go for Phase 4. Maybe they are going to push it all this way, which leads nicely on to Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
We follow Sam and Bucky after they come out from the blip following the events of Avengers Endgame.
When they announced it, I thought this is never going to work, and like the trailers just look so cool. I have to remind myself that it's not a film and it is a TV series, because I mean, if you've watched the trailer, it just looks and feels like an actual Marvel film.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, so it's Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie basically either hating each other or getting on really well, and that's going to be the sort of dynamic of the entire series. The fact that we've got Zemo coming back, I am very excited for.
I know you're going to hate me on this. Which one's Zemo?
So he's the villain of Civil War. He's the one who frees Bucky and lures them to Russia or Siberia. It's Daniel Bruhl from Inglourious Bastards. Hatty, you've let me down.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay, no, I'm glad they're bringing him back. He's good. He's slimy in all the right ways. As a carrot, as a villain.
It's just the fact he's a villain. He's a human villain who managed to take on the Avengers. It's like that. I mean, it's what they, I suppose, maybe try to do with one of the villains in Ant-Man and the Wasp, who's just that sort of sleazy gangster mafia guy.
That didn't really work yet.
No, that didn't work. But it's the fact that, yeah, like I say, Zemo's just a human character with an agenda for revenge. He knows he can't beat them conventionally. He has to manipulate the situation to turn them against each other.
He plays the human angle, yeah.
Yeah.
He's got the kind of old 50s vibe as well, which really helps. So you've got the kind of noir feel, you've got the post-war, like the kind of World War II vibe, but in the future, and you've got the manipulative. I'm just I'm just asking these questions and just full psychological torture. It's great. No, definitely.
So yeah, I've got big hopes for this one, and after WandaVision, naturally, I'm excited for it. So. For a first episode, I really enjoyed it. I've heard a lot of criticisms about it, but then I've also heard people respond to those criticisms saying, you are the type of person who will have criticised the first 3 episodes of WandaVision. I think that's just something that we're going to have to get used to, is the fact that at the end of the day, once you've got the full story, it then becomes more consistent. Where at the end of the day, we're watching a TV series now, we're not watching a film. However, fucking hell, this just felt like a film. Like I could have been watching it in the cinema. It was just brilliant. Like, I mean, I think if you're looking at the CGI between the actual films and the series, obviously it's going to be less slick, I suppose. But the whole sequence when he was flying through the canyon was just brilliant. And then the Mandalorian has a lot to answer for, because you've got to remind yourself that you are watching a TV series. At the end of the day, I know that was a case of let's throw in the action sequence at the very beginning to basically show off what we are going to be doing, and then the rest of the episode was much more about the characters, which I really liked about it. I mean, I like the whole fact that Sam had that conversation with Rhodey about like taking up the shield and not taking it on because at the end of the day it belonged to Captain America. Because what we're obviously seeing now is, now that the original six, the OG six, are now out of the picture, more or less, we're going to start learning more about all the other side characters, so to speak. And I like that. I like the fact that we met Sam's family, and the fact that they still played them. The fact that when he got dusted.
Got dusted? Why is no one using that?
Got dusted. Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Yeah, no, I like the fact that at the end of the day we got to meet Sam's family. We got to learn more about him. I just like the little details, like the fact that his nephews were kids when he was absent, and then when he came back, they're grown up. I know we already had that a bit in Far From Home.
But I'm really sorry that the blip doesn't seem to have affected him. I'm actually really disappointed in that, because I think it would have been a really nice opportunity to talk about how he missed out on his nephews, but he's missed out on life for 5 years. It's like you blinked and missed it.
Both of them have. Let's not forget, both of them were blipped, or dusted, as it were.
True. But I felt like Bucky embodied it far. His character managed to, it felt like just another thing that had happened to Bucky. Whereas with Sam, I got his sister anger, but not him.
Again, maybe that's just a Marvel problem, because I think something similar happened with Spider-Man, Peter Parker in Far From Home. I don't think they necessarily, other than the fact that they had students who were like in the younger years and now in the same year as them because of the 5-year gap, the whole turmoil that Peter had in Far From Home was dealing with the loss of Iron Man. It wasn't dealing with the fact that 5 years of his life had been lost, because I suppose in the way that they have to keep it all consistent, Peter's life was relatively unmarked by the 5 years, because I'm presuming his aunt and Ned, they were all blipped at the same time. So
yeah, that's true.
It's not like he's come back and Ned's 5 years older or something like that.
No, that's true.
They didn't have that to sort of use as a reference.
But this one should have, I feel. I think they had the time. Yeah, I'm sorry they didn't.
Yeah, well, there was lots of little moments like that. I mean, obviously they were talking about, I can't remember the guy's name, but there's a soldier who he's talking to in the early scenes of the episode, and he's talking about how there's this group out there now who, I don't know if they're terrorists or what at this point, because during the blip, as they call it, because all the alliances broke down and there was almost no borders because half the population disappeared, so they want to return to that time. So I like how that is part of the story. I also like the fact that when they went to go to the bank for the loan, the banker's there saying, or the accountant's there saying, well, you've had no income for the last 5 years. And he said, well, I've been gone for 5 years.
Yes.
I like those little moments where they're kind of bringing the story down to earth, so to speak. It'd be interesting to sort of have a film or a series about the 5 years where half the population disappeared. I think that would be fantastic.
It seems to have really weird parallels with COVID as well. Kind of like what we're going to go back to, what the world's going to look like when everything kind of returns to normal.
Yeah, there were parallels to that. Oh, that was actually something about this episode, and I'll move on to Bucky in a sec. Actually, no, let me do Bucky first, and then I'll do the parallels.
Okay.
So in that sense, obviously, we got to learn more about Bucky's family. I like the fact that we saw Bucky in therapy, and the fact that he's having the nightmares about being the Winter Soldier. Because, I mean, going back to what we were saying about the 3 Captain America films, and Bucky's character. Bucky is a very interesting character, because you're right, he has got PTSD, but at the end of the day, he had years of his life where he wasn't in control, but was still responsible for. And that was very much pinnacle in the fact that he's befriended the old man whose son he killed like years ago. Like, there was the moment where he went to that guy's flat, and you could tell that he was going to tell him, he was going to give him closure. And if he had, he could have tried to explain himself that it wasn't him, it was the other him, as it were, in the same sense that Banner and the Hulk are different people, but then the same. He wasn't responsible, yet he was responsible. And it's just the inner turmoil of Bucky was, I'm really looking forward to seeing how that kind of grows over the next 6 episodes, because in all of the Marvel films he's been in, he hasn't really had that development.
They don't do it, yeah. To me, if that was filmed like by a DC director, that would have been this absolutely painful moment where he, walks up to the door and they just slow-mo, and then he apologizes again for like his loss or something, and you can tell there's something to be said, and it just to me with Marvel, it just felt really squished, which I don't understand why. And it became more about the reveal that he was the one that killed the son than it did about Bucky. Like, it should have been about Bucky. You know, all they did was that kind of like the shot of him walking away and then crossing the name off, sort of. And it was like, no. That was a beautiful PTSD moment that you should have just like latched onto and made us feel like him. And they didn't do it. They kind of, to me, they chickened out. They fully chickened out from it. And what I hope with this is that they actually they push more and they try and get some more out of Bucky, which I'm hoping they do with the therapy stuff. But to me, it just wasn't enough, because it should have been. It was, to me, that it came from the fact that the tone felt like a film. It felt like a Marvel film completely. I agree with you. I think the first half of it very much felt like a film. I didn't feel like WandaVision made me feel like a TV series. It made it feel like there was changes happening and evolving and mystery to be found out. Whereas this one just felt like a Marvel film setup.
No, which is where I do think there's going to be a stark difference between WandaVision and this. I think this is very much going to be a by-the-numbers Marvel film, but stretched across effectively 6 hours, which might end up being its downfall. Because, like you say, with WandaVision, I mean, I'm glad that I think this was like 40 to 50 minutes long. Like, it was a proper hour-long episode.
Yes, it was. That is the only thing. It was a proper episode. Yes, which is better than WandaVision.
Whereas WandaVision, was divided into these sort of like half-an-hour chunks, at least for the most part. But again, that was because that was replicating the TV series at the time. But because the first 3 episodes were very much about the TV series or the TV episodes they were emulating, you're right, it was very much more that couldn't have worked on a cinema screen, I don't think. You needed to believe it was a TV series, even though we were watching a TV series about a TV series in a really meta way.
You need to be sitting in your sofa watching it. Yeah, completely. To get the full effect of it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
Exactly. Whereas this is obviously going to be down the other route where it is sort of like by the books Marvel. And with each of these episodes, it's going to be a case of reserving some judgments until we've seen the full thing. But then again, you might argue the other way around, where at the end of the day, it is a TV series, therefore every episode should stand on its own 2 feet. So it's a tricky one.
Oh, yes. Yes, I agree with that. And right now, I really want to go to my gut instincts, which is wait for the whole series and then watch it all. Because I felt that there was like bits and I was like, oh, okay, this is the point where the film picks up. Oh, it's over. Okay.
I still think part of it is because we are so used to Marvel's films and the way the films work that, again, because WandaVision's structure was slightly different, I think we could get on board with that and adapt quicker. But whereas, like we just said before, because this felt like a Marvel film, the fact that it gets cut off just as it starts to get interesting is more frustrating. Because if we were sat in the cinema, we'd be into Act 2 by this point. No, I think as a first episode, I liked it. I enjoyed it. I did like the fact that they didn't go in too hot straight away. At the end of the day, Bucky and Sam are still very much, they've not come together yet. They're very much in their own little worlds. They're trying to deal.
And you like that? I don't like that.
Well, no, see, I think if they did that too soon, I don't know. I think if they did that too soon, it would be a problem. At the end of the day, they've got to show them in their 2 different worlds. You've got Bucky trying to adapt to civilian life, as it were. And then you've got Sam, who is still fighting the good fight, but then struggling to keep his home life afloat, if that literally afloat, because they've got a boat. No pun intended. That was entirely unintentional.
Yes,
that was entirely unintentional, and I kind of wish that I'd thought about that beforehand.
Right, I can start my list of complaints. Mine starts actually with Sam.
Okay, here we go. Strap yourselves in.
In the same way that I love Bucky because he actually has PTSD and like serious psychological problems, Sam to me is the most vanilla character of the Marvel universe. He's so he's just perfect. Like, there's nothing wrong with him. He never raises his voice. He has just, he's calm and he does what he's told. And it's just like, oh, come on, just do something that's kind of a character quirk of some kind. I mean, when his sister is out acting him and she's been on the camera for about 4 seconds and she's already got more character and more kind of, I don't know. What does he want? What does Sam want? This is the bit I don't get. What does he actually want to achieve? He misses Captain America because they had like a good working relationship and he was his friend. But beyond that, I don't know what he wants. Maybe this is me. I don't know what he wants. I can't seem to connect with him. He's very similar kind of Tony Stark's military friend who's now a general, I think, at the beginning of the film.
Rhodey.
Yeah, he's great. He's got the kind of like, he's seen everything. He loves Tony Stark, and he's going to try and help him as much as he can, but he tries to follow the rules. And so there's that internal thing. But with Sam, there's just nothing. It's just, nah.
No, I get. Actually, no, that's fair. I do get that. I mean, even in Winter Soldier and Civil War, like Sam does, at least from as far as the film shows, blindly follow Steve. At least with Steve Rogers, he, again, particularly in Civil War, there was that whole conflict in between doing the right thing, but then what he believes to be right, so to speak. There was still that conflict within him that did make him an interesting character. And I suppose at the end of the day with Bucky, just because of his past, as it were, the fact that he was a villain and now he's become, his alter ego, so to speak, was a villain, and he's having to live with that. That already makes him a more interesting character. So, but you might have a very different opinion by the end of the series.
Yes, because the trailer showed the two of them together, and Sam actually had, he had something to defend. Because Bucky, he's lax about stuff, and he doesn't care. Really, he's following the rules, but he doesn't really care. And Sam, he's trying to make him care and do the honourable thing. And of course, to Bucky, he just, and I loved that on the trailer. I went, okay, if it's going to be about that, I'm behind it. And I think that's why I was let down this episode, because I was like, well, where is it? Where's this wonderful kind of back and forth buddy cop vibe that I thought we were going for?
Yes, but we're on episode 1. I know. This is the pilot at the end of the day.
WandaVision still managed to do it in 20 minutes, I'm just saying. They managed to create the tone of it. In the first one, you knew the characters, you knew what they were trying to achieve. You knew what she wanted. She wanted to have a happy, normal life. And you knew that. And it was like, yep, bam, we're in it. And then it was just the weird setting and all the other stuff that needed to be explained. But she had a clear motivation.
Okay. Interesting.
What did you think Sam's motivation was at the end of this?
Oh, I don't know. I know as far as his whole motivations, I do know what you mean.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, in terms of him having no flaws and being perfect, yeah, I suppose as far as how he's been depicted so far, you are quite right. Because his main motivations has just been to blindly follow Captain America in the films. But that's because he has been a side character with very little development. He didn't have the same treatment, you're quite right, as Rhodey did with Iron Man, because they were kind of on opposite sides of the line, which is what made their relationship so compelling. And again, even though you can argue that this is the first episode, therefore, one, it should be entertaining in its own right. But I do think as a first episode, it should set up the story to come, which I think this episode did do. So this moves me on to the end of the episode, where the new Captain America is unveiled.
Yes, who's clearly the villain who beat up Torres. Yeah.
Well, see, yes, I mean, if you've got some comic book knowledge, which I don't have, but I've obviously been seeing all the theories already about it because rabbit hole.
Yep.
But because at the end of the day, Sam gave away the shield to the museum because he didn't feel like he deserved it. He didn't think he could earn it. He couldn't live up to that legacy. And then obviously they've put it in a museum, but then instantly, within the space of a week maybe, given it to this new Captain America. So he's clearly been played. So I think it is going to be a case of that conflict that's going to be there now, because at the end of the day, he's given that up and it's been given to someone else. And I think that's going to be part of his arc, so to speak.
There wasn't just, I don't know, to me, it wasn't powerful enough. There wasn't, even when he saw it on the news, it was kind of like he was resigned to it. And it was like, I wanted him angry. I wanted something. Even his nephew's coming in just being like, I thought this was going to be you. Something that would have been at least kind of showed a degree of conflict inside him rather than just a kind of like, oh. I mean, bless him. I don't really think it's the actor's fault.
No. I think Anthony Mackie is a good actor, and I've seen him in lots of different other things, and he's consistently good.
Yeah,
but I think
exactly.
I think Anthony Mackie is very much playing himself to a point, because I just think his charisma is very captivating, which I think maybe is why I've just kind of underwritten the fact that we don't know what he wants, we don't know what his motivation is. He's
just the good guy thing that they suffer from. They don't know what to do.
At the end of the day, I'm still very excited. I mean, I'm a sucker for Marvel anyway, which maybe makes me slightly blind to its faults. I think as far as this first episode of The Falcon and Winter Soldier, I think it sets everything up. I think it puts Sam and Bucky in place to then come together and starts to give us little pieces as to their development. And I think by the end of it, we'll have that better journey.
But we didn't even see them in the same location.
No, but that's, you got different stories being told in different locations, and they only come together at a certain point. I think bringing them together in this episode would have been too soon, because it doesn't. I don't know. I mean,
guess.
Bucky's therapy, for instance, if you had him going from therapy straight to Sam, like, part of Bucky at the moment is the fact that he's withdrawing himself because, for whatever reason, he either doesn't trust people, or he doesn't know how to fit in the world without Steve to a point. Because at the end of the day, Steve was the one thing from his original life that he could kind of glance onto. He did go from battle to battle to battle. He never had that moment of peace where he could like meet up with Steve in the real world or something like that. And now Steve's gone. So he doesn't have anyone who can kind of relate to his experiences. Even his therapist says in that scene that Sam's been texting you, you've been leaving him unanswered. So for him to go from that scene to then meeting up with Sam in the same episode, it's like we don't have something is going to force them together, and I think it's going to be this new Captain America.
Basically, I wanted to see Bucky see the new Captain America. If they'd ended on the two of them seeing it, I think I'd have been happier.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I would have felt like, okay, this is the inciting incident, which I'm going to use because it's basically film, that is like this, right, this is, everything's going to change. And I know that it's going to be the opening of the next episode, fair enough, but to me it just was like that one thing I needed to be like, okay, this is going to bring them together. And that would have been enough for me to be like, okay, they're together, but I just didn't get that. And so I kind of was like,
having that moment where they're both watching it and both reacting to it probably would have been the better way to end it, rather than the lingering on the shot of the new Captain America.
yeah.
Because it reminded me of the scene in Hunger Games Catching Fire, where Katniss, Peter, and Hamish are all watching the announcement of the next Hunger Games, and they're all told that the
next games will be
the tributes were going to be reaped from the existing pool of victors. It's the cutting between all of their reactions which was so powerful about that scene. And I think that's exactly what needed to happen at the end of this episode. And unfortunately, it didn't. So no, I 100% agree with you on that. I think that moment, particularly if it's going to be the motivator for them to team up, it should have ended with them too, considering that the show is named after them.
Exactly.
I mean, this takes place so many months after the events of Endgame. So there's been a period of time between Steve leaving and then us getting to this point. So
yeah.
Because I honestly thought that this series was going to be these two are forced together, in the sense that neither of them wanted to team up, and that's where part of the tension comes in. And we might get that in the later episodes. But the fact that the therapist says that Sam has been trying to get in touch with you, but you've been pushing him away, I quite like that, because it's like a case of Sam knows how much like he's struggling, because at the end of the day his friend
of course we never saw.
Which part?
The fact that Sam's suffering.
Oh,
he did the speech.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's it?
Yeah.
That's it? The Asian dad had more friggin' emotion.
Yeah, that's true.
So the other thing I want to talk about, aside from a small plot hole, which is that the military would have totally helped him get a loan. If you are military personnel, you can totally have the military can assist you because it's your existing assets and they need you to have a place to stay. But anyway, we can dismiss that.
No, Kasia, no. Can we just pick up on the fact that they were asking about how the Avengers are paid, and I love that conversation, because it's like, yeah, how do they get paid? I mean, they were all living at Avengers compound, and are they like how do they earn an income? Like, because they clearly can't do a job on the side. So that really helped me, because in Age of Ultron, when they're having the party at the Avengers Tower, like Sam and Steve do have a conversation, and I think Sam's asking him, like, have you found a place to stay? And are you looking in Brooklyn? And then Steve says, I don't think I can afford a place in Brooklyn. And I'm thinking, you're freaking Captain America. You are in Avengers Tower and saved the whole world from aliens like 2 years ago. You telling me that you can't afford a place in Brooklyn? But then, it's kind of like, how do they get paid? I mean, clearly they have a place to stay because they end up living in the Avengers compound. But it's like, do they get paid, or is it just a case of we have a moral obligation to do this?
That was that was definitely a weird one. But anyway, that was an annoying small thing. I felt with Falcon, which I don't think I felt with WandaVision, is I actually felt there was too much space between characters, particularly at the fishing scene with Sam and his sister. They were on opposite ends, which of course in a film is fine because it shows the kind of metaphorical gap between them. But because I actually wanted to connect with the character, I didn't actually get kind of intimacy with it. And then the other way, they did the interview with Bucky, and there was a huge amount of intimacy and the kind of weird high angles and stuff, high angle close up, which is really interesting. So yeah, I actually it made it more like a film because I didn't feel connected to them. But I don't remember feeling like that in WandaVision.
Well, WandaVision ended up using the same aspect ratios at the time.
I don't think at the end it was, though.
No. They did. They went more. Yeah, they went more. Basically, each era mimicked the aspect ratio of the time.
Yeah.
By the finale, as it were, when it basically came back to the real world, as it were.
Mm.
I think that's when the aspect ratio changed to the kind of like widescreen 6:3 or something like that. It brought it back to the movie. It brought it back to that same style as the whole MCU.
The end of WandaVision did very much feel shot like a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
But there were moments that they managed to do with the house that just felt intimate, and I think I missed that with this one. I didn't feel close to Sam when I should have.
Well, I mean, yeah, episode 1 of 6. Again, maybe this is why we should probably just wait until it's all out.
No, I like doing it. It's nice having an overarching thing. I like it.
This is it. I mean, if anything, it'll be interesting to see how opinion changes across the next few weeks.
Absolutely.
When more pieces of the puzzle are established.
Definitely.
Yeah, I still think part of it is down to the fact that we are still used to getting our Marvel helping all in one go, as opposed to having to wait week by week.
I'm gonna hold this at Marvel's door and say you should have made it feel more like a TV feel, because that's the medium that you're showing it in. I would never say of a Netflix that it's the series don't feel like series, because they do.
That is true, actually. Yeah. That's interesting then.
So I'm being mean, but I'm not going to be lenient.
I don't see the drawback of a TV series having a movie feel. And I'm okay with that. It's just the fact that they're splitting it, obviously, into the 6 parts so that they're not showing a 6-hour-long film. Not everyone, Zack Snyder, can do that. So, I don't know.
Oh, mean.
Maybe it's...
Mean.
Yeah, there's a to and fro argument. At the end of the day, does Marvel need to make it feel more like a TV series, or do the audience need to remember that it is a TV series and not a movie?
And I think we're never going to agree on that.
No, I think it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one. It's all going into what makes it a TV show and what makes it a film.
Yeah.
But the thing I wasn't happy about was the fact that we don't see Zemo yet. I'm waiting for him to come back.
You're obsessed.
I just think he's a fantastic... I think Daniel Bruhl and I think the whole character of Zemo was really well done. And the fact that they brought him back is a very good idea. Very much looking forward to it.
I'm curious as to how that evolves with Sam's character. I'm very interested because I can see the tension between him and Bucky, definitely. But I'm curious as to... Basically, Marvel impress me with Sam, please.
But even with Sam's connection, or how Sam's going to react to Zemo, for instance, I don't know how they're going to sort of fill that in, because it's going to be the tension between Bucky and Zemo that's going to be more interesting, because Zemo's the one that used Bucky to get what he wanted in Civil War. So with Bucky trying to go through this therapy and trying to realign himself with being James Buchanan Barnes as opposed to the Winter Soldier, that's going to flip a switch when he comes into contact with the one person who brainwashed him again and turned him back into that person.
Yeah. Further to my evidence that Bucky has a character.
No, I agree. I think, Bucky definitely has a better, more complex character than Sam at this point. But then if Marvel want Sam to become the next Captain America, as it were, then they are going to have to build on his character. And maybe that's exactly what this series is going to be working towards.
Thank you for listening to A Bit of Film podcast. That was episode 1. It's been a long time in the making, but we finally got there, and we've got a lot more coming your way. If you enjoyed episode 1, episode 2 and 3 are already available, so make sure to check them out too. We go into the second episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and the trailer for James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, emphasis on the, and the holy grail that is Zack Snyder's Justice League. You can listen to these on Google Podcast and Spotify, as well as our SoundCloud page, and will hopefully soon be available on Apple Podcasts too. To keep up to date with all the latest announcements, updates and episodes, follow us on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. And if you have any film or TV recommendations, theories or just general comments, be sure to send them in. We've been Hatty and James. This has been episode 1. See you for the next episode.